Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Business Economics ECO 400 के लेक्चर नंबर 22 में खुश आमदीद. वेलकम बैक. आज उसी की पहले की तरह चंद मिनट के लिए we'll try to revise what we have learned in the previous lecture, and then we'll start about the today's lecture. So we started in the previous lecture, we started to discuss the open economy and different issues in open economy, and we started from the net exports of an economy. So we said that the net exports are the difference between exports minus imports, or you can say it is the difference between countries' output, that is Y, and its spending, which is C plus I plus G. So that tells us the net exports. So net exports could be positive, could be negative, and could be zero. So when net exports are positive, it means the country's trade is in surplus. Exports are more than imports. When net exports are negative, it means the trade is in deficit. Less exports, more imports. When nx is equal to 0, when nx is equal to 0, that means exports are equal to imports, so trade balance is 0. So that was the first market in open economy जिसके बारे में हमने बात की. That was the trade of goods and services in the goods market. And then we talked about the second market in open economy, that was the capital market or the financial markets. So जिसमें हमने capital outflow और inflow की बात की. तो we said that there is a market, the country, the resident of the country can purchase foreign assets, and the foreigners can invest in the domestic country. So that is the foreign direct investment or the foreign portfolio investment. And then the difference between capital, we will talk about the two different types of capital outflow and capital inflow की हमने बात की, और इन दोनों का जो difference है, so that tells us the net capital outflow in the economy. So the second market जिसकी हमने बात की, जिसके बारे में हमने सीखा, that is the financial market, और जहाँ पे हमने net capital outflow की बात की, और that is the difference between capital outflow एंड कैपिटल इनफ्लो. उसके बाद हमने कोशिश की इन दोनों मार्केट्स को रिलेट करने के लिए, और हमने एक आइडेंटिटी डिटरमिन की, दैट इज nx इज इक्वल टू NCO, दैट इज द नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स आर इक्वल टू द नेट कैपिटल आउटफ्लो. वी सेड दैट if nx is positive, then NCO will also be positive. So if net exports are positive, if trade is in surplus, so then this tells us the difference between net capital outflow and inflow is also positive. More capital is going outside the country and less capital is coming inside the country. And we also said that if nx is less than 0, NCO will, the net capital outflow will also be negative, will also be less than 0, means more capital is coming, capital inflow is more as compared to the capital outflow. और जो लास्ट चीज़ हमने सीखी पिछले लेक्चर में, सो दैट वाज द लोनेबल फंड्स मार्केट इन एन ओपन इकोनॉमी. तो हमने, एज यू नो दैट व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट इन एनी मार्केट, वी नीड टू सी द डिमांड साइड एंड द सप्लाई साइड, और वी नीड द सप्लाई कर्व और द डिमांड कर्व. तो हमने कोशिश की, वी डिटरमिन द सप्लाई कर्व ऑफ द लोनेबल फंड्स मार्केट इन एन ओपन इकोनॉमी, जो कि वर्टिकल था, और उसके बाद हमने डिमांड to bring the equilibrium in the loanable funds market, we tried to determine the demand curve जो कि negatively sloped था, and the market was in equilibrium where both curves were intersecting each other. उसके बाद हमने 3 different experiments की बात की. हमने ये कहा कि if there is a change in fiscal policy at home, if there is a change in fiscal policy at abroad, or if there is a change in investment demand, so 3 experiments की बात की, how these experiments affect the supply and demand of loanable funds market, and how these in turn affect savings, investment, net exports and net capital outflow of an economy. तो 3 different experiments की बात करने के बाद हमने उनका effect देखा, each of the experiment का effect देखा on investment, saving and exports and net capital outflow. So that was all about the previous lecture. Now we'll continue the first part. We will continue the topic of open economy. So we're done with the first part. Second part की बात करेंगे और आज हम क्या सीखेंगे. The sequence of our lecture, of today's lecture is, first of all we'll talk about the exchange rate. We'll try to learn what is exchange rate, what is the difference between nominal exchange rate and real exchange rate, and then we'll talk about 4 experiments, try to see how these experiments affects the market of exchange rate. That market, when we talk about the market of exchange rate, यहाँ पे हम supply of exchange rate की बात करेंगे और demand of exchange rate की बात करेंगे, and try to bring equilibrium in the exchange rate market and see the effect of 4 different experiments on the exchange rate market. And finally we'll talk about the purchasing power parity. तो purchasing power parity के बारे में बात करेंगे, how it can play its role in terms of export and imports or capital inflow or outflow, how this can affect both of these 2 markets, that is the export market and the capital inflow outflow market, that is the financial market. So this is the sequence of our today's lecture. So we start with the first part of the lecture, so where we would like to tell you the difference between nominal exchange rate and the real exchange rate. So when we talk about nominal exchange rate, that is denoted by E. So nominal exchange rate is the relative price of one currency or domestic currency in terms of foreign currency. Like if we talk about the Pakistani currency, so how much is the value of 1 rupee in terms of dollar अगर आप करें, how much is the price of dollar in terms of rupee, $1 is equal to almost 92 rupees. So the price of one currency in terms of other currency is known as the exchange rate, and that is also the nominal exchange rate. So this is how we can, when जब आप ट्रेड में इन्वॉल्व होते हैं, जब कंट्रीज एक दूसरे को ट्रेड में इन्वॉल्व करती हैं, तो they must know or they must convert the different currencies into the domestic currency and they determine the value of their currency, right? So यहीं पे हम appreciation की बात करते हैं, depreciation की बात करते हैं. तो जब आप appreciation की बात करते हैं, so जब अगर आपके जो exchange rate like rupees और dollar का exchange rate, when rupees has more value in terms of dollar, अगर हम ये कहते हैं कि अगर if $1 is equal to 90 rupees, then we say that अगर present सूरत हाल क्या है कि $1 is equal to 92 rupees. But if it is like this, and that if $1 is equal to 90 rupees, so we can say that the value of our currency has appreciated, right? Appreciate कर गई, right? Value बढ़ गई है, right? So depreciation का क्या मतलब है कि अगर currently $1 92 रुपए का है और after some time, some few days, if the value of $1 is 95 rupees, so that tells us that value of our currency has depreciated. So this is how the currencies appreciates and depreciates, right? So whenever we talk about exchange rate, whenever we talk about the nominal exchange rate, so we'll talk about the relative price of one currency in terms of other currency. Now what is the real exchange rate then? Now the real exchange rate basically is the relative price of domestic goods in terms of foreign goods. Like if we compare 2 countries like Japan and US, so the price of Japanese Big Macs per US Big Mac is the real exchange rate. So real exchange rate basically, in real exchange rate we take the ratio of the prices of the domestic and foreign goods. So the difference between nominal and real exchange rate, in nominal exchange rate is the price of one currency in terms of other currency, and the real exchange rate is the relative price of domestic goods in terms of foreign goods. So we'll continue to explain these two. Now understanding of understanding the units of E, that is the real exchange rate. So real exchange rate को समझने के लिए we need to look into more detail. तो E जैसा कि हमने कहा, E is equal to small, that is the real exchange rate is equal to as E into P over P star. E is the nominal exchange rate, P is the domestic price, P star is the foreign price, right? And so suppose we are comparing yen Japanese goods with the US goods. So yen per dollar into per unit US goods divided by yen per unit Japanese good. Now suppose the value of $1 US is equal to 80 yen, right? So, and if the price of good is $100 US in United States of certain product, and the price of same product in Japan is 1600 yen. So what will be, how we can explain this example? So as we said that कि दोनों का जो exchange rate है 80 multiplied by price of that product in US is 100, price of that product in Japan is 16, so this is 8000 over 1600, so 1 over 2 is the exchange rate. So goods are relatively cheaper, the product is relatively cheaper in US as compared to the good in Japan, right? So this is how we can explain the real exchange rate, that where we see a real exchange rate is the ratio of the relative price of domestic currency in terms as relative price of domestic good in terms of foreign product. Now E in the real world and our model. So we try to explain what is E in the real model, real world, and what is E in our model, that जिसकी हम बात करेंगे, जिसको हम explain करेंगे. In real world, we can think of E as the relative price of a basket of domestic goods in terms of basket of foreign goods, right? Like for example, हम बात करते हैं कि if the price of one bushel of rice in US is $100 US, and if the price of the one bushel of rice in Japan is 1600 yen, so what would be the real exchange rate in this case? As we know that, as जैसा कि previous example मैंने बताया कि $1 is equal to 8 yen, so the price of that 100 price of the value of one bushel of rice in US is 80 into 100 is 8000, and the value of rice, one bushel of rice in Japan is 1600. So this is how you can convert. So 800 by 8000 by 1600. So the product, the rice is comparatively expensive in US and it is cheaper in Japan, right? So this is how we can determine the real exchange rate, and which is the ratio of the price of domestic product in terms of the price of foreign product. Now if we talk about our model, अपने मॉडल की हम बात करें, there is just one good, that is the output. तो यहाँ पे जो हम बात करेंगे output की बात करेंगे, and then try to determine the real exchange rate in the open market. Now so E, that is the real exchange rate, is the relative price of one currency output in terms of the other currency output. So when you compare the relative output of one country in terms of other countries, so that gives us the real exchange rate in the economy or in the world, right? So how net exports depend on E. So how real exchange rate affects net exports of the economy. Suppose if there is increase in real exchange rate, so what will happen? We were comparing the two countries, like we're talking about US and other country. Now if real exchange rate goes up, so US goods become more expensive. When US goods become more expensive relative to foreign goods, so what will happen to its exports? Its exports goes down and imports goes up. Then what will happen to the net exports? Net exports goes down because the difference between exports and imports is negative. जब negative होगा तो net exports क्या होंगी? कम होंगी. So what we have seen, what we can conclude that real exchange rate plays a very significant role in determining, in affecting the net exports of any country, right? अगर real exchange बढ़ जाता है तो net export कम हो जाती हैं, और अगर रियल एक्सचेंज रेट कम होता है तो नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स बढ़ जाती हैं. सो रियल एक्सचेंज रेट प्लेस ए सिग्निफिकेंट रोल इन डिटरमिनिंग द नेट एक्सपोर्ट ऑफ एनी इकोनॉमी इन द वर्ल्ड. Now we'll try to further explain the relationship between real exchange rate and net export with the help of diagram given below, जो कि आपको सामने नजर आ रहा है. So if you see that, as we said that net exports is a function of real exchange rate. So जैसा कि हमने कहा कि net जो real exchange rate है वो negatively affect करता है on the net export of an economy. तो if we see that in this, अगर इस नीचे वाले इस diagram में देखें, when the real exchange rate is low, so what will happen to the net export? तो जैसा कि आप देख रहे हैं इस डायग्राम के दो हिस्से हैं, एक पॉजिटिव साइड है which is the right side, एक नेगेटिव साइड है. So if net interest rate, so as the real exchange rate is low, the net exports are high, right, are increasing. So when E is relatively low, US goods become inexpensive or become cheaper for the foreigners, so their exports will increase and so the net exports will become high. And vice versa, if exchange rate is high, जो कि इस डायग्राम में आप देखें, यहाँ पे हमने हाई एक्सचेंज रेट लिया है. पिछले डायग्राम में हमने कोशिश की है कि जब हम लो एक्सचेंज रेट लेते हैं तो क्या होगा एक्सपोर्ट्स के साथ, नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स के साथ क्या होगा. और अगर आप इस डायग्राम में देखें तो वी हैव ट्राइड टू शो यू द हायर एक्सचेंज रेट. When the exchange rate is higher, तो आप नेट एक्सपोर्ट देखें तो ये नेगेटिव साइड पे चली जाती हैं, नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स कम हो जाती हैं. सो द real exchange rate is very important determinant of net exports of a country. तो जब real exchange rate कम होता है तो net export पॉजिटिव हैं, इंक्रीज होती हैं. जब real exchange rate हाई होता है तो net exports कम हो जाती हैं, because exports are less than imports. एक्सपोर्ट आपकी महंगी हो जाती हैं. जब एक्सपोर्ट्स आपकी महंगी होती हैं तो वो उनकी डिमांड कम होती है. सो यू हैव टू मीट द डिमांड ऑफ द कंट्री बाय importing that product from some other country. So exports are less, imports are more, so net exports become negative at a high exchange rate, and vice versa at a low exchange rate क्या होगा, net exports बढ़ जाएंगी. So this is how we can relate these two parameters, which is the net exports as well as the real exchange rate in the country. Now we'll try to see how E is determined. किस तरह से हम real exchange rate को determine कर सकते हैं. As we know that we have the accounting identity, जिसमें हमने last lecture में हमने बात की थी. हमने ये कहा था कि nx is equal to s minus I, or we said that nx, which is the difference between export and imports, and is known as net export of a country. So net exports are equal to saving minus investment, which is also known as the net capital outflow of an economy. So we saw earlier S minus I is determined. S depends on domestic factors of production, which is the output, fiscal policy variable, and so on. So domestic savings depends on so many factors. अगर आउटपुट किसी इकोनॉमी की बढ़ रही है तो सेविंग्स ज़्यादा होती है नॉर्मली. जब सेविंग्स ज़्यादा होती हैं तो द डिफरेंस एस माइनस आई का जो है वो पॉजिटिव होता है और एक्सपोर्ट्स बढ़ जाती हैं. जब एक्सपोर्ट्स बढ़ती हैं तो नेचुरली क्या होगा, नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स पॉजिटिव हो जाएंगी और नेट कैपिटल आउटफ्लो भी पॉजिटिव हो जाएगा. Similarly, there are some other variables which can affect the savings of an economy, like if we talk about fiscal policy. Now there are two parameters of fiscal economy. On one side we have expenditure, on the other side we have income, right? If the expenditure of a country goes up and revenues goes down, so what will happen? So if expenditure is greater than revenue, तो naturally savings कम होंगी. जब savings कम होंगी तो net exports कम होंगी और net capital outflow कम होगा. And if expenditures of an economy are less than the revenue, so budget is surplus. When budget is surplus, savings जो है बढ़ना शुरू हो जाती हैं. savings ज़्यादा होंगी तो क्या होगा? net exports ज़्यादा हो जाएंगी. जब net exports ज़्यादा होती हैं तो net capital outflow भी ज़्यादा होता है. जैसे ये हमने पिछले लेक्चर में एक आइडेंटिटी मालूम की थी, NX = NCO, और हमने ये कहा था कि जब net exports बढ़ती हैं तो net capital outflow भी पॉजिटिव होता है. It means more capital outflow from the country and less capital inflow in the country. So S depends on output as well as fiscal policy variable. I, as we said, that I, which is investment, is determined by the word interest rate, which is R star. So R और जो investment का relationship है, which is negative. If the word interest rate goes up, investment goes down, and vice versa. So we can say that net export, ये जो इक्वेशन है, इसको जो ऊपर वाली इक्वेशन है NX = S - I, जो आपको टॉप पे नजर आ रही है, इसको हम आप लिख सकते हैं NX is a function of E, which is the real exchange rate, is equal to S bar, which is given, minus I into R, which is the demand or the investment in the economy. So net export is equal to S minus I R. I will try to explain the determination of real exchange rate with the help of this diagram. As we know that we have the saving curve, which is given, and we have the investment curve as a net exports curve, which is, as we said, that on x-axis we are measuring net exports, on y-axis we are measuring the real exchange rate. So we are try to determine S1 is the supply of exchange rate and NX is the demand of the exchange rate. So both of these two curves intersect at a point, which is the point basically E. Now at this point the real exchange rate is E1 and the net export are NX1. So neither S nor I depends on E, so the net capital outflow curve is vertical. As we know that investment और saving दोनों जो हैं वो real exchange rate पे depend नहीं करती, but they depend, as we have seen, that saving depend on output and other fiscal policy measures, and investment depend on the word interest rate. So both of these two variables, saving और investment जो हैं, ये real exchange rate पे depend नहीं करती. तो we assume that, so we have a vertical curve, net capital outflow vertical curve, and then E adjusts the net exports when the net capital outflow S minus I. So we have a negatively sloped net exports curve. So जैसा कि हमने कहा कि हमारी in this exchange rate market we have two sides. One side is the net exports, the other, which is the demand side, the net capital outflow, which is the supply. So we have supply curve, which is vertical, we have demand curve, which is negatively sloped, and which tells us that the net exports और जो real exchange rate का relationship है वो negative है. अगर real exchange rate बढ़ता है, that price of one price of one country product in terms of other country product बढ़ती है, तो क्या होगा? net exports कम हो जाएंगी, and vice versa. Now demand, foreign need dollar to buy net exports, so the net capital outflow S minus the supply curve to be invested abroad. So we have a supply curve, as we said, that the foreigners need dollars to buy net exports, US net exports. So foreigners को जब हम ये कहते हैं कि net exports US की positive है, तो foreigners को क्या चाहिए? डॉलर दे दी, डॉलर, right? So that is the demand. Now what is the supply? Supply is the net capital outflow, is the supply of dollars to be invested abroad. So the demand in case of this foreign exchange market, तो हम इस फॉरेन एक्सचेंज की मार्केट की बात करें तो सप्लाई जो हमारे पास है वो क्या है, नेट कैपिटल आउटफ्लो है, विच इज़ द डिफरेंस बिटवीन सेविंग माइनस इन्वेस्टमेंट. एंड द डिमांड है इसमें फॉरेन एक्सचेंज मार्केट में, दैट इज द फॉरेन डॉलर्स demanded are needed are required to buy US net exports. So this is the demand which we have given, and the net exports curve determine the demand of dollar, demand of currency, and S1 minus IR, this determines the supply of dollar. So both supply of dollar, supply of exchange, supply of currency or supply exchange, demand of currency intersect at a point which determines the equilibrium real exchange rate and equilibrium net exports of a country in the economy. तो जैसा कि आप देखें इस डायग्राम में दोनों यहाँ पे इंटरसेक्ट कर रहे हैं, और this tells us the equilibrium real exchange rate E1 and the net exports in the economy. Now we'll try to see different experiments, और उन experiments का effect देखेंगे, how these different experiments can affect this foreign exchange market and determines the price of dollar and determines the demand and supply of dollar, and how this can affect the savings, investment, net exports and capital outflow in the economy, and how this affects the real exchange rate and then in turns net exports of the country. 4 एक्सपेरिमेंट की हम बात करेंगे और एक एक को एक्सप्लेन करेंगे किस तरह से they can intervene and affect the exchange or the currency market. Now fiscal policy at home, we'll talk about fiscal policy at home, we'll talk about fiscal policy abroad, then we'll talk about the effect of increase in investment demand, and finally we'll see the effect of trade policy to restrict imports, right? So what will be its impact on the foreign exchange market. तो इन एक एक करके हम एक्सप्लेन करते हैं और डिस्कस करते हैं कि इन चारों पॉलिसीज का क्या इफेक्ट होगा, चारों पैरामीटर्स का क्या इफेक्ट होगा ऑन दी मार्केट, फॉरेन एक्सचेंज मार्केट पे. सबसे पहले हम बात करते हैं फिस्कल पॉलिसी एट होम. As we know that, जैसा कि आपको डायग्राम में नजर आ रहा है, on y axis we are measuring the real exchange rate, on x axis we are measuring the net exports. We have S1 minus IR star, the given supply curve of currency, then we have a demand curve which is net export curve. Both are intersecting and determines the real exchange in the world market, which is E1, and net exports are NX1. Now suppose a fiscal expansion reduces, the physical expansion होती है that reduces national saving. Physical expansion means more expenditures are more than revenue. जब हम फिजिकल एक्सपेंडिचर की बात करते हैं तो दो साइड्स हैं फिजिकल पॉलिसी के, एक्सपेंडिचर ऑन वन साइड, रेवेन्यू ऑन अदर साइड. तो जब आप फिजिकल एक्सपेंशन की बात करते हैं मींस मोर एक्सपेंडिचर देन रेवेन्यू, राइट? सो दैट मींस लेस सेविंग. सो जब सेविंग्स कम होती हैं तो नेट कैपिटल आउटफ्लो इज नेगेटिव, मींस मोर कैपिटल आउटफ्लो एंड लेस कैपिटल इनफ्लो. सो the supply of dollars in the foreign market, foreign exchange market, supply of dollar in the foreign exchange market goes down and will shift leftward, right? So when supply of dollar in the foreign exchange market कम होती है, leftward shift होता है curve, तो this curve intersects the demand curve at some point, and then the real exchange rate goes up, causing the real exchange rate to rise. So when the real exchange rate to rise, the real exchange rate बढ़ेगा, तो what it means, net exports जो है किसी country की वो कम हो जाएगी, because we said that the relationship between real exchange rate and net exports are negative. I will try to explain it again. So हमने स्टार्ट किया इस the original curve which is S1 and net exports, the demand curve of downward demand curve which is denoted by NXE. So both of these two curves intersect at a point, let us say initially at E. This determines the equilibrium in the foreign exchange market. So E1 is the exchange rate, real exchange rate, and NX1 is the net export of the country at this point E. Now suppose a physical expansion होती है किसी मुल्क में. Physical expansion का क्या मतलब है कि expenditure are more than the revenue. जब expansion होती है fiscal policy की तो it means reduce saving. जब savings कम होती हैं तो the difference, हमने कहा कि net capital outflow जो हमारे पास है that is equal to saving minus investment. So when savings are less than investment, so what will happen? The supply of dollars or the net capital outflow will become negative. Supply of dollar will also go down. Supply जो है वो of dollars will go down. जब supply of dollar कम होगी तो supply curve leftward shift होगा from S1 to S2 और new equilibrium जो है जहाँ पे ये नया सप्लाई कर्व जो है डॉलर का एग्जिस्टिंग डिमांड कर्व ऑफ डॉलर को इंटरसेक्ट करता है एंड दैट इज गिव ए नेम टू दिस पॉइंट जस्ट फॉर सिंपलिसिटी, समझने के लिए. सपोज इट इज एम पे जो है नया कर्व जो है इंटरसेक्ट करता है एग्जिस्टिंग डिमांड कर्व को. सो व्हाट इज हैपनिंग, क्या हुआ, व्हाट इज द इफेक्ट ऑफ रिडक्शन इन सप्लाई ऑफ डॉलर. तो व्हाट हैपन, प्राइस जो है फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रियल एक्सचेंज जो है वो बढ़ गया. जब रियल एक्सचेंज रेट बढ़ा, द प्राइस बढ़ी, रियल एक्सचेंज रेट बढ़ा, तो व्हाट विल हैपन टू द नेट एक्सपोर्ट. नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स वो क्या हो गई, कम हो गई. व्हेन नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स आर लेस, सो व्हाट विल हैपन मींस योर एक्सपोर्ट्स आर नो एक्सपेंसिव as compared to imports, right? Exports expensive हैं तो there will be less demand of exports, so you have to import to meet the demand requirements. उनकी डिमांड बढ़ जाएगी, imports की प्राइस बढ़ जाएगी, so the net exports becomes negative, goes down with the adoption of expansionary fiscal policy at home. Now we'll see that the second experiment which is the fiscal policy abroad. तो अगर economy change its fiscal policy, if there is a change in fiscal policy abroad, so what will happen? So जैसा कि हमने पीछे भी फर्स्ट लेक्चर में, पिछले लेक्चर में भी हमने देखा था अगर फिस्कल पॉलिसी अब्रॉड की जब हम बात करते हैं, we'll see what will happen to the demand of dollars if there is a change in the world interest rate, right? So an increase in the interest rate, what will happen to reduce the investment? What will happen? Investment क्या होती है, कम हो जाती है. इन्वेस्टमेंट कम होती है तो सेविंग्स बढ़ जाती हैं, तो नेट कैपिटल आउटफ्लो क्या होता है, बढ़ जाता है. एंड द सप्लाई ऑफ डॉलर इन द फॉरेन एक्सचेंज मार्केट गोज अप, राइट. सो we'll try to explain this fiscal policy at abroad effect in the diagram given below, जो कि आपको सामने नजर आ रहा है. On y axis we are measuring exchange rate, on x axis we are measuring net export. We have given S1 supply curve of dollar, we have demand curve of dollar which is denoted by net export. Both are intersecting at a point which is known as the equilibrium point. इसको हम E से डिनोट करते हैं. E पे सूरत हाल क्या है, E1 is the real exchange rate and the net exports are NX1 in the country and in the economy. Now suppose इंटरेस्ट रेट में इजाफा हो जाता है, वर्ल्ड मार्केट का जो इंटरेस्ट रेट है वो बढ़ जाता है. जब वर्ल्ड मार्केट में इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ता है तो उसका इन्वेस्टमेंट पे क्या इम्पैक्ट पड़ता है. एज वी नो दैट द रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन इन्वेस्टमेंट एंड इंटरेस्ट रेट इज नेगेटिव. तो जब इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ेगा वर्ल्ड मार्केट में तो इन्वेस्टमेंट क्या होगी, कम होगी. इन्वेस्टमेंट कम होगी, द डिफरेंस बिटवीन एस माइनस आई इज पॉजिटिव. तो दोनों का जो डिफरेंस है वो क्या होगा, पॉजिटिव होगा. तो नेट कैपिटल आउटफ्लो विल बिकम पॉजिटिव, मीन्स मोर कैपिटल आउटफ्लो, कैपिटल इज आउटफ्लोइंग फ्रॉम द कंट्री is more than the capital inflow is coming in the country. So the supply curve will shift to the right, and this is intersecting. Supply of dollar will increase, dollar in the foreign exchange market will increase, and the curve will shift to the rightward. And now this curve is intersecting at a point N, right? एन जो है, सो व्हाट इज हैपनिंग, व्हाट इज द सिचुएशन इन द फॉरेन एक्सचेंज मार्केट एट पॉइंट एन पे क्या सूरत हाल है। अगर यहाँ पे आप देखें तो आपका रियल एक्सचेंज जो है which is the relative price of one country product in terms of other country product is goes down। जब रियल एक्सचेंज रेट कम होता है तो what will happen, नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स जो है कंट्री की बढ़ जाती है। जब नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स बढ़ती हैं तो क्या होगा, इकोनॉमी मूव। नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स बढ़ने का मतलब ये है कि आपकी एक्सपोर्ट्स चीपर है as compared to imports. So NX is positive. When NX is positive, economy is moving in the positive direction, in the right direction, right? So we can say that there is growth in the economy, right? So trade is favorable. The rise in the price, supply of dollars in the foreign exchange market is positive. So this is how fiscal policy abroad can affect the savings, investment, capital outflow, net capital outflow, and then of course it affects the net exports of an economy. Now, as we said that the third parameter or the third experiment is increase in investment demand. अगर investment की demand बढ़ जाती है, right? So what will happen? So investment की demand बढ़ने से reduces net capital outflow, means as we know that the net capital outflow जो हमारे पास है, net capital outflow जो हमारा is equal to saving minus investment, right? अगर हम ये कहते हैं कि इन्वेस्टमेंट की डिमांड बढ़ती है, इन्वेस्टमेंट की डिमांड बढ़ने से क्या होगा, ये जो कंपोनेंट है NCO का, ये दिस विल बिकम नेगेटिव। सो नेट कैपिटल आउटफ्लो जो है वो कम हो जाता है। जब नेट कैपिटल आउटफ्लो कम होता है तो नेचुरली द सप्लाई ऑफ डॉलर इन द फॉरेन एक्सचेंज मार्केट गोज डाउन। जब सप्लाई ऑफ डॉलर मार्केट एक्सचेंज रेट गोज डाउन होती है, एंड सप्लाई ऑफ डॉलर जब कम होती है एक्सचेंज रेट मार्केट में, सो सप्लाई कर्व लेफ्ट वर्ड शिफ्ट होता है। तो इस सूरत हाल को हम एक्सप्लेन करेंगे डायग्राम में के ज़रिए करते हैं, जो कि आपको सामने नज़र आ रहा है। एज यूजुअल on y-axis we are measuring the real exchange rate, on x-axis we are measuring the net export of an economy. So original supply curve of dollar is given by S1 minus I1. The original net export curve is given by NXE. Both of these two curves are intersecting at a point which is point E. Now at this point E1 is the real exchange rate and the net export of an economy are NX1. Now suppose we want to see the effect of this experiment, what will happen to the net export, what will happen to the net capital outflow if there is a change in investment demand. If there is an increase in investment demand, so what will happen to the net capital outflow or the supply of dollar curve? जब इन्वेस्टमेंट बढ़ती है, इन्वेस्टमेंट की डिमांड बढ़ती है, जो नेट कैपिटल आउटफ्लो है वो कम हो जाता है। नेट कैपिटल आउटफ्लो का मतलब क्या है कम होने का, कि आपका कैपिटल इनफ्लो बढ़ जाता है, कैपिटल आउटफ्लो कम हो जाता है। तो नेट कैपिटल आउटफ्लो जो है वो नेगेटिव हो जाता है। तो व्हेन देयर इज डिक्रीज इन द नेट कैपिटल आउटफ्लो, सप्लाई कर्व विल शिफ्ट फ्रॉम टू द सप्लाई कर्व विल शिफ्ट टू द लेफ्ट, और जो शिफ्टेड कर्व है, द न्यू सप्लाई कर्व है जो कि आपको नजर आ रहा है, दैट इज विद द ग्रीन लाइन। ग्रीन लाइन के साथ जो कर्व है दैट इज द न्यू सप्लाई कर्व। नाउ दिस न्यू सप्लाई कर्व इज इंटरसेक्टिंग द demand of dollar or the net export curve at point, let us say this is point D. Now what is happening at D? अगर आप गौर करें इस डायग्राम में, रियल एक्सचेंज रेट जो है वो बढ़ गया है फ्रॉम E1 टू E2। जैसा कि हमें मालूम है कि नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स NX is a function of NX into small e, right? So जो नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स हैं किसी कंट्री की वो डिपेंड करती हैं रियल एक्सचेंज रेट पे। अब रियल एक्सचेंज रेट जब बढ़ता है तो नेट एक्सपोर्ट कम होती है। तो हमने ये कहा था कि जो रिलेशनशिप है बिटवीन नेट एक्सपोर्ट एंड रियल एक्सचेंज रेट नेगेटिव है। तो उसी तरह जब यहाँ पे इस डायग्राम में रियल एक्सचेंज रेट बढ़ा फ्राम E1 टू E2, तो आपने देखा कि नेट एक्सपोर्ट कम हो गई फ्राम NX1 टू NX2। सो द increase in investment demand reduces the net capital outflow and reduces the supply of dollar in the foreign exchange market, and the supply curve and the net capital outflow curve shifted from S1 to S2 are leftward, and this curve intersect the existing demand curve of dollar at point D. So D पे क्या सूरत हाल है, हमने ये देखा कि D पे रियल एक्सचेंज रेट बढ़ गया फ्राम E1 टू E2, और जो नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स हैं वो कम हो गई NX1 टू NX2। सो दोनों the increase in investment demand actually basically raise the real exchange rate in the world market and reduces the net exports in the economy. So this is how the increase or the change in investment demand can affect or alter the net exports in the country. Now we'll talk about the fourth experiment, how that can affect the net exports and real exchange rate of an economy. Now as usual we have इसको हम explain करेंगे with the help of a diagram given in front of you. So on y-axis we are measuring the exchange rate, on x-axis we are measuring the net exports. This is the since foreign exchange market. So we have a supply curve of dollar or of the currency, which is vertical, the difference between S minus I, which is also the curve of net capital outflow of an economy. So we have an investment curve or the demand curve of dollar, which is NXE1, and both of these two curves are intersecting and determine the equilibrium in the foreign exchange market. So they intersect at point E, and at E the real exchange rate is E1 and the net exports are NX1. Now suppose if the government or the country adopt restricted, they put some restriction on imports. So at any given value of E, कोई भी जो आपके पास जो E1, that's the given value of a real exchange rate, and import quota, जब import quota fix होता है तो what will happen to imports, आपके imports कम हो जाती हैं. When the country restricts its import by imposing import quota, तो imports क्या होती हैं, कम हो जाती हैं. जब imports कम होती हैं तो what will happen to the exports, exports बढ़ जाती हैं. नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स क्या होंगी, बढ़ जाएंगी नेचुरली. जब आप देखें नेट एक्सपोर्ट जो डिफरेंस है आपका किस चीज़ का डिफरेंस है, एक्सपोर्ट्स माइनस इंपोर्ट्स. तो हमने ये कहा कि विद द इम्पोजिशन ऑफ इंपोर्ट कोटा और सम टैक्स और टैरिफ द कंट्री हैज़ रिस्ट्रिक्टेड इट्स इंपोर्ट्स, तो इंपोर्ट्स कम हो गई. जब इंपोर्ट्स कम हो गई, सिंस द नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स आर द डिफरेंस बिटवीन एक्सपोर्ट्स माइनस इंपोर्ट्स, तो इंपोर्ट्स के कम होने की वजह से एक्सपोर्ट्स अगर वही भी रहती हैं तो जो डिफरेंस है बिटवीन एक्सपोर्ट माइनस इंपोर्ट्स का वो बढ़ जाता है. तो व्हाट विल हैपन थ्रू द नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स, नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स गोज अप. सो द डिमांड फॉर डॉलर क्या होगा, जब नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स बढ़ती हैं तो डॉलर की डिमांड बढ़ जाती है. जब डॉलर की डिमांड बढ़ती है तो कर्व जो है डॉलर का, डिमांड कर्व फॉर डॉलर विल शिफ्ट टू द राइट वर्ड. अब जब राइट वर्ड शिफ्ट करता है, दिस न्यू कर्व is intersecting the original supply curve of dollar at some point. Let us call this point Z. Now what is happening at Z, if you see आपका real exchange rate बढ़ गया है from E1 to E2, but the net exports remain same. So the capital flow and the supply of dollar remains fixed, right? The supply of dollar remains same, capital flows remain same, and the net exports of the countries are same. So what we have concluded, what we have deducted from this experiment, हमने ये कहा कि अगर कोई मुल्क, कोई कंट्री अपनी इंपोर्ट पे रिस्ट्रिक्शन लगाते हैं, इंपोर्ट पे कोई कोटा लगा देते हैं, फिक्स कर देते हैं। ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है कि इंपोर्ट्स कम की जाएं। जब उनकी इंपोर्ट्स कम होती हैं तो इट मीन्स नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स गोज अप, सो डिमांड फॉर डॉलर कर्व विल शिफ्ट टू द राइट, shift to the right. So what is happening? The economy moves to a new equilibrium point. Foreign exchange market moves to a new equilibrium point, which is point Z. Now the foreign exchange market is equilibrium at point Z. Now what is happening at Z? हमने ये देखा कि real exchange rate तो बढ़ गया foreign exchange market में from E1 to E2, but the net exports and the capital flows as well as the supply of dollar is fixed and it remains same, so there is no change. So with the imposition of import quota or restrictions on import, supply of dollar remains same, net capital outflow remains same, and as well as net exports remains same. तो 4 experiments हमने देखे and then try to determine what will happen to the foreign exchange market, what will happen to the supply of dollar, what will happen to the demand of dollar, and how this effect of supply and demand of dollar can affect the net exports, net capital outflow, saving, investment in the economy. We'll continue the so the results basically are there is change in this अभी जैसे कि हमने समराइज किया इस स्लाइड में भी यही रिजल्ट जो अभी मैंने आपको बताया उन्हीं रिजल्ट्स को दिखाया गया है कि जब कोई कंट्री कोई ट्रेड पॉलिसी अनाउंस करती है एंड दे ट्राई टू रिस्ट्रिक्ट देयर इंपोर्ट्स, तो जब जैसे कि रिजल्ट्स मैंने आपको बताया वी कैन रिपीट और यू कैन सी दोज रिजल्ट्स हियर ऑफ इंपोर्ट कोटा। हमने ये देखा कि व्हाट हैपेंस with the introduction of import quota, the real exchange rate effect on real exchange rate is positive, demand बढ़ गई है, NX is 0, supply is fixed, delta IM is negative, that is the policy of the government. And then we have seen that net exports are change in net export is negative, rise in E, rise in real exchange rate बढ़ गया है, real exchange rate बढ़ेगा तो net exports कम हो जाएंगी. Now the determinants of real exchange rate will try to see in अगली 2-3 स्लाइड्स में हम देखेंगे किस तरह से हम कौन से डिटर्मिनेंट हैं जो नॉमिनल एक्सचेंज रेट को डिटरमिन करते हैं. How we can, so far we have determined the real exchange rate and have seen the effect of different policies, different experiments on the real exchange rate, and then its effect on the world market, effect on net capital outflow as well as the net exports. तो अभी तक हमने बात की कि किस तरह से exchange rate determine होता है, what are the determinants of real exchange rate, and then how the effect of different policies, different experiments can affect the real exchange rate in the world market, in the exchange rate market, and how that effect can in turn affect the net capital outflow as well as net exports in the economy. So, अभी अब जो हम बात करेंगे कुछ अगली चंद स्लाइड में we'll talk about the determinants of the nominal exchange rate. So we start with the expression, as we know that the real exchange rate is equal to nominal exchange rate into the domestic price over the foreign price. Now we can rearrange this equation and solve it for the for the nominal exchange rate. So this will become E is equal to real exchange rate into the ratio of world price over domestic price. So E depends, the nominal exchange rate depends on the real exchange rate and the price level at home and the price level at abroad. So as we know, each of them is determined. E is equal to E into the real exchange rate into the world price over domestic price. Real exchange rate is determined as we seen in the previous slide, NX is equal to S minus IR. So real exchange rate is determined by the net exports of a country, which is depending on the exchange rate, is equal to the supply is equal to the net capital outflow, which is the difference between saving and investment. इसी तरह हमने ये भी देखा the price जो है किसी country में which is determined by the in the loanable funds market, and which is L is a function of R star plus pi comma y. So the demand of loanable fund depends on the nominal interest rate as well as the output in the economy. And if we talk about the word price P star, उसको भी हम determine किया M star over P star, L star R star plus pi star expected inflation comma expected output. So we can say that the nominal exchange rate is equal to E plus E into P star over P. So we can rewrite this equation in terms of growth. We can rewrite this equation in terms of growth if we take the growth rate of this equation. So delta E over E is equal to delta small e over E, which is the real exchange rate, plus delta P star over P minus delta P over P, which is equal to delta E over E plus inflation inflation in the world market minus inflation in the domestic market. Now for any value of given, so we can say that if the value of the real exchange rate, which is delta E over E, is given, so the growth rate of nominal exchange rate depends on the growth rate or depends on the foreign and domestic inflation rates. तो हमने so what we have concluded, हमने कहा कि nominal exchange rate जो है that is equal to the real exchange rate into the price of foreign currency, price of foreign product, the price of the product at foreign market over the price of product at domestic market. If we take the growth rate of that equation, दोनों side पे अगर growth rate apply करें, so the change in E over E is equal to the change in E. हमें अंदाज़ा है कि जब दो फैक्टर्स मल्टीप्लाई होते हैं तो उसके ग्रोथ रेट हैं तो वो एड अप हो जाते हैं, राइट? तो वी कैन राइट डेल्टा E over E plus delta P star over P minus delta P over P. So that is equal to the delta E over E plus inflation rate in the world market, foreign inflation rate minus domestic inflation rate. So we can say that the nominal for any value, any given value of the real exchange rate, growth rate of real exchange delta E over E, अगर इसको हम given consider करें, so जो growth rate है nominal exchange rate का, that depends on foreign and domestic interest. So we can conclude that, we can say that the determinants of the nominal exchange rate are the foreign and domestic inflation rate. So the nominal exchange rate depends on the foreign inflation rate and the domestic inflation rate. Now we'll come up with the last part of today's lecture, that is the purchasing power parity. Now there are two definitions which are given by the economist of that PPP, that is the purchasing power parity. It is a doctrine that states that goods must sell at the same price in all countries. So it is the principle that states that the goods must sell at the same price in all the countries. Currency तो जितनी भी चीज़ें मुख्तलिफ ममालिक में बेची जाती हैं, सेल की जाती हैं, वो एक ही कीमत पे बेची जाती हैं. तो इस असूल को, इस प्रिंसिपल को परचेजिंग पावर पैरिटी कहा जाता है. परचेजिंग पावर पैरिटी मीन्स इक्वल प्राइस इन ऑल कंट्री. द प्रोडक्ट सोल्ड must be sold at the same price in different countries. Or in other words, दूसरी definition इसकी ये हो सकती है, the nominal exchange rate adjusts to equalize the cost of a basket of goods across the country. जो nominal exchange rate है, which is the price of one currency in terms of other currency, वो adjust करती है to equalize the cost of baskets of goods across the country. So we can say that purchasing power parity एक ऐसा principle है, ऐसी theory है जिसमें goods sold की जाती हैं same price पे different countries में. So reasoning इसके पीछे ये है, the reason behind is the arbitrage. What is the arbitrage? To sell the price, it is the process of taking advantage of selling the product at different prices in different countries, right? So when you sell the price, for example, if the product is selling of the product at different price in different countries and take the advantage and take the profit, so this basically is known as the arbitrage. Now what is the reason, what is the logic, how this persists, this PPP persists in the world market? Now suppose if we talk about that, if the product is cheaper in US, so the countries buy that product from US and sell in, suppose the Japanese buy that product from US and sell in Japan, right? So what will happen with this? So the price in US start increasing and the price in Japan start going down. So in this way the price in the two countries will become equalized. तो हमने ये देखा कि जब हम परचेजिंग पावर पैरिटी की बात करते हैं तो उसको इस तरह से एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हैं कि इफ सपोज वन प्रोडक्ट इज सोल्ड एक्सपेंसिव इन इज चीपर इन यूएस एंड एक्सपेंसिव इन जापान, सो व्हाट विल हैपन विद ट्रेड के जरिए क्या होगा? सो द पीपल आर द कंट्री विल बाय प्रोडक्ट फ्रॉम यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स एंड सेल इन जापान at a different price. So when exports of US increases, उसकी प्राइस जो है कम होना शुरू हो जाती है, प्राइस बढ़ना शुरू हो जाएगी, और उसमें जापान में जब इंपोर्ट्स बढ़ेंगी, चीज़ें आएंगी तो उनकी प्राइस कम होगी. तो एट द एंड क्या होगा? एट द एंड द रिजल्ट विल बी the price of the product will be same in both countries. So this is known as the purchasing power parity. So the product must be sold at same price in different countries. So it is also known as the law of one price. We can explain this law as E into P is equal to P star. E into P is the cost of a basket of domestic good in foreign currency, and P star basically is the cost of basket of foreign goods in foreign currency. P simple is the cost of basket of domestic goods in terms of domestic currency. So solve it for E, so we can find E is equal to P star over P. So the nominal exchange rate between two countries equal the price ratio of the price of level of the two countries. We can say that the nominal exchange rate must be equal to or is equal to the price of the ratio of two countries products. So we can further, if E is equal to price of price of product in foreign country over price of product in domestic country, and we know that E, that is the real exchange rate, is equal to E into P over P star. तो यहाँ पे just substitute इस, अगर हमारे पास जैसा कि हमें पता है कि रियल एक्सचेंज रेट इज इक्वल टू E into P over P star. Now just substitute the value of E here, which is the nominal exchange rate, and the value of nominal exchange rate is P star over P into P over P star. Now if you cross multiply this, इसको ख़त्म करें, so the real exchange rate will be equal to 1, right? So and the NX curve जो है, जब real exchange rate 1 होगा, so the NX curve, जो net export curve है, that will become horizontal instead of negatively sloped. So we have vertical supply curve in the foreign exchange market and the horizontal demand curve of dollar. So under PPP, under purchasing power parity, changes in SI have no impact on E and E. So when we talk about purchasing power parity, so we can conclude that it has no changes, whether there is a change in net capital outflow, which is saving and investment, or net export have no effect on the nominal exchange rate as well as on the real exchange rate. So under purchasing power parity, any change in net capital outflow, any change in net export have no impact on real exchange rate as well as the nominal exchange rate. Now, does PPP, the purchasing power parity, hold in real world? No, it is not possible. It is practically not possible, and this is because of two reasons. One, because there are some products, some goods which cannot be traded between the countries. And for example, haircut की बात करें, so this is sort of activity, this sort of service which cannot be traded between the countries. Transportation cost, so there is a difference in transportation cost between the countries, so we cannot say that the product can be sold at the same price across the countries, right? Because of the difference in transportation cost and because of the difference in non-traded products in the countries. Number two, second reason could be goods of different countries not perfect substitute. So the goods produced by different countries are not perfect substitute of each other, right? So we cannot say that PPP is practically valid or happening in real world. It is simple and it is just intuitive, and so it cannot exist in the practical life. In the real world, nominal exchange rate have a tendency toward their PPP values over the long run, right? So practically a purchasing power parity is difficult to hold true in the real world. So this was all about today's lecture. So I just summarize in few minutes what we have learned today. So we started to learn about the nominal exchange rate. We said that nominal exchange rate is the price of country currency in terms of another country currency, and then we talked about the real exchange rate. Now what is real exchange rate? It is the price of country goods in terms of another country goods, right? So दोनों में फ़र्क क्या है कि नॉमिनल एक्सचेंज रेट में हम एक कंट्री की करेंसी की वैल्यू दूसरी कंट्री करेंसी में मेजर करते हैं, और the real exchange rate will talk about the price of one country goods in terms of the other country product. The real exchange rates equals the nominal exchange rates and the ratio of prices of two country products. Now उसके बाद हमने सीखा कि किस तरह से how we can determine the real exchange rate and the nominal exchange rate in the foreign exchange market. So NX, हमने ये कहा कि NX depends negatively on the real exchange rate if other things remains equal, and real exchange rate adjusts to equate NX, which is the net exports, with the net capital outflow. उसके बाद हमने बात की how the nominal exchange rate is determined. हमने ये कहा कि nominal exchange rate equal the real exchange rate times the country price level relative to the foreign price of that particular product. For a given value of the real exchange rate, the percentage change in the nominal exchange rate equals the difference in the foreign and domestic inflation rate. So finally हमने ये कहा था the growth rate of nominal exchange rate is equal to the growth rate of is equal to the inflation rate of the foreign inflation rate plus the domestic inflation rate given the value of the growth rate of real exchange rate. And finally we'll talk about the purchasing power parity. Purchasing power parity की जब हमने बात की, now purchasing power parity is a doctrine, is a principle, and that basically states that the good must be sold at the same price across the country. जब आप एक चीज़ को मुख्तलिफ ममालिक में एक ही प्राइस पे बेचते हैं तो इस प्रिंसिपल को purchasing power parity कहा जाता है. Practically purchasing power parity is difficult to prevail in the economies because of two reasons. हमने ये कहा कि there are non-traded goods in the countries and there are sometimes difference goods are not perfect substitute between the countries. So because of these two reasons हम कह सकते हैं कि real world में practically PPP जो है purchasing power parity जो है वो hold नहीं करती. So dear students, this is all about टुडेज लेक्चर। आज का लेक्चर यहाँ पे ख़त्म करते हैं। टिल द नेक्स्ट टाइम, सी यू, गॉड ब्लेस यू, अल्लाह हाफिज़।